Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones, and we have part 2 today with Major Thomas Schueman. Tom, absolutely great blog. Really enjoyed the chat last time, so much so that we wanted to roll straight into a part 2. We just got done recording it. A lot of wisdom in there. I really enjoyed the chat. It flew by, so I know you guys are going to love it too. Before we get into it, I want to say a very big thank you to Combat Fuel for sponsoring the podcast and for sponsoring my Juicy Gains. Love their pre-workout. In fact, when I get in, I am going to be boshing a scoop of it, and I'm going to be doing a bit of legs Benedict. I love the vegan protein, salted caramel. We've got a bit of sunshine at the moment. While I was recording today, it was probably the 2 days of sunshine that we're going to have this year. And let me tell you, if you get yourself a blender, get some ice, get some yogurt in there, as in, like proper Greek yogurt. Get some Greek yogurt in, get a bit of milk in, get your vegan protein. All right, hang on. You can't be putting those stuff in, though, if you are a vegan, obviously. So you're asking yourself, why are you using vegan protein, guys? Because it tastes delicious and it's a lot easier on your guts, in my opinion. Anyway, you bosh that all in, put a banana in with it and a bit of peanut butter, mix it all up, and you will have yourself a delicious blended beverage. So today on the episode with Tom, we dive into all kinds of stuff. We start by talking a bit about some of our favourite authors, which is a bit self-indulgent of me, but you know what? My podcast at the end of the day, innit? So we had a great chat in there. I think you guys will enjoy it. And then we talked about moral injuries. We talked about PTSD. We talked about, PTS, I should say, post-traumatic stress, because it's not a disorder. Got to start saying that. And we dived into a lot of Thomas's own story, which, I always appreciate when people come on here and do kind of bare their soul, because it's something that we all need to do. It's something that we all need to be comfortable with and learn from. We'll talk a bit more about that in the podcast. But right, let's just get into it, shall we, guys? Please give a very warm welcome to Major Thomas Schueman. Tom, welcome back to the podcast, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, mate. We've got more stuff to talk to from last time, but before we dig into any of that, you put a post up on your Instagram, which is something I can really relate to, which was you had a picture of your inbox with your Stephen Pressfields, and you had Carl in there, friends of the podcast, and then you had this little clip of a kid like, is this real life? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. It's David Goes to the Dentist. It was like viral several years ago. And David just got, he's in the car with his dad, and he had some like laughing gas or whatever, and so he's super fucking high. And he asked his dad, he's like touching his face, and it's like, is this real life? And last night I got another email from Carl Melantis, and I'm just thinking like, well, how is this fucking real? Like, how am I just corresponding with literally, like, if you could like extrapolate it to like the Beatles or like, this mega like fangirl moment, like it's the person that I probably most idolize, and to have them sending me an email like that is just it's wild. So yeah, I have I've been fortunate enough to have Pressfield a couple times and come join me for a discussion with my class. I just had Being West join me last week for class. I have Tim O'Brien slated to join me next month. Had Carl join me last semester for a discussion. I think he's going to join me for the PB Abate book club. And most recently, I have scored Jim Webb's contact information, and I'm actually teaching Fields of Fire right now in class. And so Jim Webb was hard to get a hold of. I've always been a guy that just shoots my shot, right? And then I am pretty relentless in my pursuit. Whether it's the Taliban, you name it, I'm gonna get after it. My Instagram followers have said, "Hey, I know Steve Pressfield." And I said, "Oh, I would like to know him." So like that's how a lot of those connections were made. But Webb, I couldn't. I put a line out a couple times. I couldn't get anything on Secretary Webb. So I went to his website. He had like a generic email address on his website. I spammed the shit out of that. Nothing. Uh, I had heard that he was active on Twitter, so I didn't have a Twitter. I downloaded Twitter. My don't even know how to fucking tweet, but I'm just like trying to whatever. So I'm just at Jim Webb, at Jim Webb. Hey, tweet at Jim Webb. Nothing. I'm like, fuck. I really want to have a discussion with him. The students are really into the book right now. I remember the first time I read his book, what an impact it made on me when I first read Fields of Fire. And I was at a writing conference last weekend with the guys from Dead Reckoning, Pipes and Pages, and the chief editor of Coffee or Die Mag. And I just noticed that a Jim Webb started to write for Coffee or Die Mag. And I looked into it. I'm like, okay, that's his son. I'm with the chief editor.
Nice.
Who's his boss.
Yeah. Hand it over.
And I was like, hey, do you think you can? It's kind of I think maybe a dick move to put his son in that position, but
Nah.
so yeah, I got Jim Webb's. I sent him a message, and he responded, Major, this is my personal email. Do not disseminate it. I'll give you a call next week. And it was wild. I was teaching. We're still teaching remote, and so I was in my office teaching virtually, and I got a phone call, and it was from a Virginia number, and I know that Secretary Webb is from Virginia, and I just told my students, I'm like, just give me 1 minute. I take the call, and I'm like, it's like, Major Schueman, this is Jim Webb. I'm like, I unmute my students. I'm like, it's Jim Webb. I'll be back in a minute. So he's like, I got to give it to you. You really are persistent. I'm like, yes, sir. So yeah, I couldn't ever imagine or dream of the opportunities that I've had over the last year or two, but it's been really, really incredible.
I think something you said there, dude, like shooting your shot. For an American, it's a bit of an American term. For sort of British listeners, it basically just means take your chances, make things happen. Overwhelmingly, people will want to help you when you get in contact with them and ask them. Is what I've found, and it's a quid pro quo thing too. So if you've built, for instance, with this podcast, it gives people an opportunity to come on and promote their books, whatever. So it's you've got to offer value to them as well. So for you. I'm sure they love the opportunity to come and talk to students at the Naval Academy. We can't expect people to just give us everything of their time and things for, just for our personal gratification. But I do think people are, in the main, very happy to help. And it surprises me that more people don't kind of ask, to be honest. I think people out there, I'll give a shout out to young Sam that helps with the podcast here. He was just the first person to get in touch to say, can I help with the podcast? Boom, next week he's on the podcast because he shot his shot and, then he came onto the podcast. When you are talking about, because this is something is weird because it clicked with me because last night I was having one of those moments, I don't know if you ever have them, when the enormity of life hits you and you're like, this is fucking crazy. Like everything that's going on, you're thinking about all these figures from history and like where you fit into it and what's going to happen when you die and like where have your grandparents gone and all these things. And it starts to almost crush your chest. There's so much going on. What is your thoughts about, are you a religious person? Do you believe we live in virtual reality? What's your, like, when you think one of these is it real moments, where's that fitting into your framework of kind of like what life is?
Yeah, well, when you have two kids under 2, you're just living moment to moment and you're just, you're very present and just trying, it's contact front, right? it's just a reaction to every ambush. And so I haven't had the luxury to have any of those meta moments really in the last 2 years because I'm just generally too tired to think beyond what actually needs to be done right now. I am a man of faith, but it was interesting. I was just talking to my students about this yesterday, that how so much of life is just chance, and so especially when you read these Vietnam authors, whether it's Webb, Marlantis, Bing West, O'Brien, this idea of chance just kind of keeps coming up, and because the battlefield, that's all it is. It's just everything is just chance, chance and luck, and I just think much of it is chance and luck, and then I do think, when people are so obsessed with like LinkedIn, right, and like networking, and uh, I I think that relationships are going to be much more powerful than, your LinkedIn connection. Your relationships are your network. And so I think that just by being a good dude and being a good friend to my friends and brother to my brothers, right? Like I just feel like that is the strength of my network, that I'm able to have these opportunities just by trying to be a good dude to those around me, and then I put out that I was looking for an original copy of War is a Racket. I didn't even put it out. I just said, has anybody seen a copy of War is a Racket that isn't, $5,000? Because every copy is like over 5K if it's in good condition. And people kept sending me Google links to eBay, and I'm like, yes, I Googled it. Like, I know, like, it's like, but I was just wondering if anyone had anything that, some kind of inside sources on that I'm not tracking on. And then, yeah, I just got a DM and say, hey, what's your mailing address? And it's just, that to me, again, it's just the strength of the relationships that you develop. I think that's, so it just comes down to chance, but you can also, create your own luck, I think, a little bit by being a good dude and being present for the people that need you. And
Yeah, I agree, mate. So War is a Racket, that's something that I'm interested in as well. It kind of corresponds with a lot of what I've kind of. I wasn't actually aware of it until I'd already kind of come to a lot of those views myself, and then it was very very interesting then to hear about this from a general in what like it was the First World War, 20s and 30s, right? He had a very long career. He's someone I'd love to talk to if that was possible. Like I'm sure you're the same. Who are the, because obviously we still have access, thankfully, to the Vietnam era of of authors. Who is it beyond that you'd love to be able to sit down with if it was possible?
I do think Smedley Butler, he's very much like a father figure to me, in that with somewhat of a lack of father figure throughout, extensive periods of my life. I think he's someone that I look up to and admire as just a man of principle. And, he was always getting in trouble for the things he said. He got condemned because he called Mussolini like a piece of shit. And like, that was like, before, and so he got in trouble for that. But I mean, his entire Marine Corps career was dogged by the fact that he was going to say what he thought and wasn't going to play by, he wasn't, many star officers, flag officers probably are playing by a certain playbook, right? Following certain rules. And I imagine it gets political at a certain level, right? And he was just a guy that gave no fucks and said what he thought. And it's what kept him from being a comment on the Marine Corps. But I would imagine that if he could do it all again, he would probably stay true to himself. And so he is someone that I think I would talk to. Obviously, I think Marcus Aurelius is someone who I would talk to, because to have the power and reach and influence that he had, and what seems like humility and perspective is probably very rare. No, like no one else could. Like he was ruler of the world, more or less. Like and so like to talk to a guy who could rule the world. And then I love Thomas, from the disciple Thomas, one because I'm a Thomas, and two just because he's a guy who struggled sometimes with doubt, wasn't afraid to admit that he sometimes struggled with doubt, but then at the end of the day, uh, had convictions and that he was willing to fight and die for. And so I think maybe that would round out my top three.
I've never actually sat down and read the Bible, but one of the things I do sometimes is if I've got something that's on my mind or a thought or something, I'll put it in and just put Bible quotes. And there's a lot of sites that have related to a certain topic will just give you all these different quotes on that. And and people can believe in the Bible or not, but what you can 100% believe in is the wisdom that's in there. And I really recommend people do that sometimes. Just put in what if you're struggling with, I don't know, like let's say father-son relationship or whatever. Pop that in there, search it, and you'll just get all these different quotes. I just stumbled across it when I was researching a book, and now it's just something I go back to every now and again. Really, pretty interesting one because it's not the kind of book that a lot of people and outside of religion are going to sit down and read. But it's a shame to not access all this kind of wisdom that's in there. I want to get now into, we're going to talk about a bit about the award system and stuff like that. And one of the things we're going to talk about in there is TBI, traumatic brain injury. I don't think this is something that's been highlighted in Britain. Well, I know it's not something that's been highlighted in Britain to the same extent as it has in America. So can you first give us an overview of what TBI is? Because it seems like it's such an important issue that everyone needs to know about, but somehow it's flying totally under the radar here.
I think Hunter Seven did a really good piece on traumatic brain injury. I'm trying to pull it up. Their graphic was really great, but they had the physical, actual aspects of a traumatic brain injury, but also then some of the cognitive aspects of a TBI, and then some emotional corollaries there as well. So, I mean, there are different grades or variants of TBI, and I'm really, going to tread very lightly here as a not an expert. But for the U.S., specifically active duty, there was a MAR admin that came out, which is like just a message to the force and the Marine Corps that came out probably several years ago now that revised the Purple Heart criteria to include different variants of a traumatic brain injury. And so the key factor in that traumatic brain injury was a loss of consciousness. And so if there was some type of loss of consciousness associated with the blast, you would be considered a grade 2, grade 3 concussion or whatever it was. And so that made people who had previously been ineligible or did not meet the criteria of Purple Heart expanded the idea or the criteria just a little bit for TBIs. So I think it is what it sounds like, right? It's traumatic brain injury. Typically, people think concussions, that type of stuff. But I think there's more to it than just like hitting your head. It's also like being around explosions or a lot, right? Like so, like if you shoot a lot of rockets, or you throw a lot of grenades, it's that concussive force that's kind of consistently rattling your dome around a little bit. I think all those can kind of play into traumatic brain injury. And then there are some guys like infantry guys or special forces guys where, you have repeated exposure to these rocket blasts in training, or you're doing demolitions and you're blowing a door off and then you're blowing a door off and you're in the stack and you open your mouth, right? And a little shake the bell and then, you go in. And when I was at the School of Infantry, I mean, we would shoot 30, 40 rockets every cycle, and you're supposed to come off the line after 8 rockets, like I think, or something like it becomes unsafe. I think we say after you supervise 8 rockets go off or something, but sometimes you just continue to push. So and for anything more scientific, I think I I would be reluctant to get into it. But Hunter Seven, check out Hunter Seven. They've got a lot of great stuff on TBS.
Again, it seems something when you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, obviously getting hit in the head is not, or like, but it doesn't. It's if you punch someone in the head, we all understand that. We all understand the rugby injuries, the NFL injuries, but it's. I think it's the stuff like a Mortimer, a 12-year Mortimer. The amount of concussions, like the reason that mortar bomb is going to be able to fly so far is because of an explosion and a concussion. It's forcing it out, and that way, that force is going in every direction, including through your brain. I've got friends who in Iraq, were hit by 20 EFPs on a tour, and you think, used back then, you'd think, oh well, doesn't matter. They walked away from it. And now you're starting to think, damn, I'm really worried about those friends because they got schwacked badly, 20 times in a 6-month period as well. And when you start to see all the care that's in sports going on for it now, you realize that, this is a big deal, and it's something that I'm just not hearing any kind of talk of over here whatsoever. We should as well. I don't want to assume as well that all the British listeners understand what Purple Heart is. So can you just give us a rundown on that?
Purple Heart is a medal that you receive for physical injuries, and so it's had a interesting history. It wasn't always called the Purple Heart. It's considered our oldest medal. Its history has fluctuated where it's gone away for a little bit, it's come back for a little bit. The criteria have changed, but currently, you receive a Purple Heart for injury sustained while in contact with an enemy force, and so it has to be an enemy involved. Has to be the cause of an enemy engagement of some type of physical wound.
All right, so with the Purple Heart, then one of the things that I think we wanted to chat about today was it's obviously there's been a big emphasis. In fact, you know what? Let's kind of rewind it a bit, and I'll say where mine was, because mine was in 2000 when I joined, and the kind of the look on moral injury and the look on quote unquote invisible wounds. It didn't exist back then. Now, obviously, the wounds existed back then, but the conversation didn't exist at all. And it was something that if it was ever talked about, it was in the most derogatory manner, that anybody that had any mental wound or anything like that was either they were lying, they were bluffing, they were trying to get out of work, or they were a coward, or they were just, one way or another full of shit. And I've seen a massive shift in the last 20 years of how that's changed. What was the kind of attitude towards it like when you joined, and have you seen a similar kind of shift in thinking towards it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the pendulum has swung into an acceptance that PTS or moral injuries are taken very seriously. I think it has potentially swung too far, that we are at times too sensitive to the ideas of PTS or moral injury, in so much as that we're now almost prescribing it to our troops. And I can provide a vignette. So on my second deployment, I was a reconnaissance advisor to the Afghans, and I was a JTAC, and so I was out there dropping bombs for those guys. And I flew back as one pack with the MEF headquarters group, which the MEF is above the division. It's the Marine Expeditionary Force. It's like the highest echelon of headquarters. Now, those guys had never left Leatherneck, Bastion and Leatherneck. And it's not to denigrate their service or their sacrifice. Any time away from your home, from your family, is to me, it's honorable and commendatory. So it is not at all a slight to that, and it doesn't have to be a competition. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm a grunt, you're this, right? It's nothing. I'm nothing negative. I actually have only positive things to say, that they're willing to go deploy on behalf of their country. My issue was, as I said, I had to do their reset training with them. And so their chaplain comes in starts off by saying like, none of you are okay right now, and so we use this Colonel Cooper's color code, and he says, many of you are in the red, some of you are in the black, meaning like, aggression, overwhelmed, and and he's just saying like, you all have been damaged, you all have PTSD, and I'm like, could they maybe not? Like, I
Hmm.
don't, I think there's a possibility that they might be okay. Did they miss their families? Was that hard? Like, yeah, but like, do they all have PTSD right now from that deployment? I'm not so sure. I mean, they had Wi-Fi, and the dessert menu at the chow hall there was like five-star resort type. I think they might be. And then I was sitting next to these two lieutenants, and I'll never forget their conversation. And he's like, "Hey, man, have you been noticing?" Like, so this is right after Chap says this, and then he goes, "Have you been noticing like you really can't control your rage lately?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I was at the barber shop." And the barbershops around Marine Corps bases, as you can imagine, are very packed on the weekends. And so you gotta, like, it's like the deli, you gotta take a ticket, you gotta take a number. And he's like, "Yeah, I was at the barbershop, and someone cut in front of me." And he's like, and I almost lost it. Like, I had to leave because I was like so angry. And I'm like, if someone cut me in the barbershop at any time, I'd be fucking annoyed, right? I'd be like,
Yeah.
what the fuck, right? Like, it's not because of your deployment. It's because that's an annoying thing that to happen. And so, we conflate any kind of emotion with, oh, this must have, there's some kind of corollary to my deployment experience. And so we have become much, much more sensitive to it. But in our attempt to destigmatize it, which it's horrible what the Vietnam veterans had to go through, right? And there was no ability, there was no trust, there was no kind of safe place to talk about it. And so, in a very noble effort, I think, to destigmatize issues around PTS and moral injury, we I had 17 Marines in my company that I had to separate for a condition, not a disability. Because as soon as someone, when I was a company commander, as soon as someone says, I feel stressed out, we have to stop. We have to put the kid gloves on and say, oh, this Marine feels stressed out. Like, let's get into the wizard. Let's stop. And it's like, it's conveniently happens like right before like a 20K hike, right? It's the night before 20K hike. The sergeant's going to fuck you up tomorrow. And it's like, I think I am sad. And it's like, uh, and yeah, and once they go there to the wizard, there's hands off. It's like, you cannot do anything. And it's like, whatever the recommendation is, you just follow the recommendation and no questions asked. And so I did find that challenging. And when I was at the School of Infantry, so they come there from boot camp. There's so many of these privates that as soon as one of these sergeants gets in their ass, it's like, nope, I'm sad. And they know, and they know the secret handshake that like it used to be you had to smoke weed to get out. But when you did that, you'd get a dishonorable discharge. And now they know
Hmm.
that there's a
Yeah.
secret
Yeah.
handshake because it's on Reddit and shit that like you just have to say, I'm sad. And then you can get a discharge and it's not a dishonorable discharge, right? You get an honorable discharge. And so I would say that we there was a huge need to do much better talking about moral injury and PTS, and I think we've come a long way. I think there's still areas that we can improve because within certain communities, I think it's still kind of mm, frowned upon. Uh, but we have at points we get a little coddling almost. It's like, are you just stressed out right now because you got yelled at, or do you actually have some kind of mental disorder or something, and so it's interesting. We talked about Smedley Butler. Smedley Butler took a 9-month hiatus. He left the Marine Corps for nine months and went and worked at a coal mine at West Virginia because he had some kind of nervous combat stress breakdown.
All right, guys, lend me your ears for a couple of minutes while we talk about the sponsors. I know the temptation right now is to skip through, but I ask you, please don't do that, because at the end of the day, these companies are what make the podcast happen, so you wouldn't be able to listen to this if it wasn't for them. They're veteran-owned and veteran-operated as well, if that's what gets you off. So please just give us a couple of minutes of your time and listen about Zulu Alpha Strap Company. They make bombers watch straps for alley blokes. If you guys are on our social media at Veteran State of Mind, and if you're not on there, then get on there. You will have seen the posts I picked, the post I post about Zulu Alpha straps. They make absolutely gleaming straps, guys, for your timepieces. At the end of the day, if you're going to spend money on an expensive watch, then you're going to want it to be looking, you're going to need the right strap to go along with it, because otherwise, what is the point in having the nice timepiece if it's then just let down by a substandard strap? By the same token, if you have an awful watch, what a way to spruce it up. Get a good strap on there, and then that will deflect people's eyes from your terrible watch. So everybody wins. If you're in the military, you know how important it is to be in the right place at the right time, so you need a good timepiece. And I'm not just saying this is genuine. I have had multiple straps snap on me from other companies, either on tour or in just to be honest, in civvy lives. I've had that happen when I've lost watches in bars because my strap has snapped off. That hasn't happened with Zulu Alpha straps because they are bombers watch straps for alley blokes, of which I am one. So check them out, guys, at Zulu Alpha Straps, ZuluAlphaStraps.com. Everything's linked up in the show notes. Just go and click on there. You go through to them. Also want to say a big thank you to Escape the Lakes. You've heard me talk about them before, guys. This is a new sponsor of the show. We're very grateful to have them on. This is, again, another veteran-owned company. What they're doing is basically it's extreme orienteering. They have competitions going on which are going to test people to the limits of their physical, mental endurance. If you guys know orienteering, micronavigation, all that kind of stuff, I know those will be familiar terms to guys that were in the military listening, and hopefully to a lot of our civilian listeners as well. The events that they're putting on, guys, are you have a series of checkpoints to hit as you're doing normal orienteering. But the difference with Escape the Lakes is that you also have a hunter force on your heels. So taking it up a little notch, making it a bit extreme. And this is taking place at some of the most beautiful and also the most challenging scenery around the UK. Sounds like a lot of fun, but there's more to it as well, because they have some fantastic prizes. There's a bunch of stuff up for competitions. And this is the people taking part in this as well. I think they've already booked out their first event. So we're kind of looking more at future events here. But the people taking part in this, guys, are, there's a lot of like champion athletes and very high level performers taking part in this. So to be honest, I think just from a point of view of the people that you'd meet going along to this, it makes it worthwhile going to, because I've always said this, that the people you surround yourself with, those are the people that you become. So if you want to take up your fizz to the next level and your mental game to the next level, then these are the kind of people you want to be associating with. So check them out. Linked up down in the show notes. All right, guys, thanks for listening to that, and thanks for supporting these companies. Because as I said, at the end of the day, if there's no company sponsoring this podcast doesn't happen. So let's get behind them like they got behind the podcast. One of the things that I think about is, and I'll be 100% honest with this, is with my own problems, when I look at it, it wasn't in isolation. There was other things as well that was, for instance, relationships. And I put a little poll on the podcast social media, and I think it was something like 3/4 of the people said on there that relationships had messed them up worse than combat had. Now, if that doesn't mean you haven't had some kind of like trauma in combat, but it might be the bad girlfriend or bad boyfriend that pushes you then into the depths of things, and then you drink on top of it and all that kind of stuff as well. So the other thing as well is, I think, because you were saying like there are certain communities in the military where it's still kind of frowned upon. I totally understand why a lot of people don't want to put their hands up and say, I've got an issue, because they don't want to then lose the job that they love. It seems to me very strange that, if someone breaks their leg, we will rehab them and we'll get them back to the job. But with PTSD in the British Army, it's like, oh, you've got PTSD, there's your discharge, goodbye. So, well, hang on a minute. This guy's got 16 years service, let's say. He's got all this tour experience. Maybe he needs a 9-month Smedley Butler hiatus, or maybe he needs a bit of counselling, and then he can go back to work and he'll be stronger for it. So I don't think that because you've had PTSD, I've had PTSD. I reckon if I went back to Afghanistan now and did another tour, I would be a much better soldier than I was last time. I don't think that it's something that needs to break you. And I agree with you that I think we've kind of swung too far the other way because people are probably terrified about getting sued or, labeled that they don't care and all that kind of stuff. Have you had any? You've done a couple of tours? You did a couple of very, like your first tour especially was, a very kinetic tour. Let's say. Have you had any problems? And if you have, how did you overcome them? And how did you, do you find that it's something that has, in its kind of perverse way, maybe helped make you a better officer, a better leader?
Yeah, I think you talked about people bringing in their relationships and how that they felt like they had potentially PTS from something like that. And I think so again, there's this thing called Colonel Cooper's color code, and he was Colonel Cooper said basically when you're in the white, you have no situational awareness, you're extremely vulnerable. To me, it's like your head is in the clouds. There's white, yellow, orange, red, black, and so when you are in the yellow, you're alert but relaxed. And so when something negative or bad impacts you when you're in the yellow, you think, I can respond to this fluidly because I was kind of expecting something to happen. Something did happen. And so when you go outside the wire on a patrol, you're in the yellow, right? You're alert, you're relaxed, you expect something to happen. And so when the Taliban shoots at you, you go, oh, well, of course the Taliban shoot at me. They're the Taliban, right? And I've been training for this whole time. Or even when someone gets wounded, you say, oh, well, I carry a tourniquet for a reason, right? And I've been doing these tourniquet drills for a long time. And so those kind of events, to me, don't have to become overwhelming because we're expecting them. And so this idea of expectations, I think, is so important. So I like to kind of use a metaphor of a boxer in a ring. It's like when a boxer goes in the ring, they put their hands up because they're expecting to get hit. And so if a boxer doesn't go in the ring with their hands down, eyes closed, and that, I mean, you would get knocked out. And so, like, when you put your hands up, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't mean that but you at least blunt that trauma, right, a little bit, and you are able to more effectively respond and recover when you're prepared for it. And so the Stoics had a term, premeditatio malorum, a premeditation of evil. And it's this idea that you understand that there's bad shit out there in the world, that you may encounter it today. And what I want to say is like, hey, we're all in the arena of life. And that ambush is coming, whether it's in the form of a relationship, whether it's in the form of cancer, whether it's you lose your dog, that ambush is coming. And so you got to stay in the yellow and you have to have these expectations. And one thing that is scientifically proven is that if you've had a lot of trauma in your childhood, you are primed then to potentially not deal with the trauma in combat as well, right? And so like you're more predisposed to having a more adverse or intense reaction to some of the trauma that you have. And so I think my childhood trauma affected me in a good way and in a bad way, in that like I was very used to compartmentalizing. And so because there was always so much chaos going on when I got into combat and it's all chaos, I was like, oh, well, I know how to do this. I've been doing this my whole fucking life, right? This I know this shit. Like, this is no problem. But on the back end, even if you're able to compartmentalize those things really well, Brian Shantosh, Navy cross recipient from 3rd Pacific Marines, he says, you put all that stuff in a box, and then your box becomes a closet, and then your box becomes a garage, and then your box becomes a warehouse, and then your box becomes an Amazon warehouse, and you just keep, if you don't at some point unpack that box, that's just it's gonna be returned to sender, right? It's just gonna show up on your front porch one day and say, "Hey, motherfucker, I'm here. Open up," and you may not be ready to deal with that. And so, I you have to be able to effectively compartmentalize while you're in combat, especially as a leader, because you have to say, "Oh, there's this emotion, there's this feeling." Set it aside, right? And so, like, that's why the Spartans broke the bracelets before they went into battle. You know, they put their humanity on the side, and they said, "I'm going to go do animal stuff, and I'm going to go act like an animal for a while." And so, you essentially, it's like you deaden the nerve. And so it's like, "Oh, I'm about to feel something. Don't have time for that. Blunt the nerve, blunt the nerve, blunt the nerve." Well, the issue is that when you spend so much time conducting yourself like an animal and not feeling human emotions, you might start to be uh, emotionally unavailable, as some women have accused me of being, right? Or you might, you don't have the right empathy. You start to become cold or distant because you get more comfortable in not feeling than feeling. The issue is like all that stuff that you're not feeling, it's not going anywhere. It's still it's just residing somewhere else, waiting to come back at some point. And so, um, much of my moral injury and my PTS in combat was associated with insider threats, and was really this fratricide, this blue on blue, and I was so prepared to fight the Taliban. I'm an infantry marine, right? I've been preparing for this, for years. And so when again, it's like, I'm like, yeah, the Taliban shot an RPG. Like, that's what the fucking Taliban does. Like, and so like but then I come back inside the wire and I take off my gear and my flak and my Kevlar and I say, this is somewhere that should be safe. And then you find yourself betrayed by your leadership, and that's when betrayed by your friends, betrayed, that betrayal. It's that I took my flak jacket off. I thought I was safe, and that's the whole idea of one of the premises of Matterhorn. Is he starts off. Melis was between the jungle and the relative safety of the perimeter wire, right? Thinking that inside the wire would be somewhere that's safe. Turns out, if you go to the last scene in the book, Hawk, don't give it away, right? It's not safe inside the wire, and the whole novel are examples of these insider attacks or this blue on blue. And so that kind of stuff was really, Marcus really says, choose not to be harmed and you won't be harmed. I was choosing to be harmed. I was choosing to be very harmed, and I was in a bad, bad spot from all that. And but I packed all that shit in a sea bag. I packed all that shit in a box, and I said, I can't deal with this shit right now. And yeah, that all comes at a cost, and it has damaged relationships. It has caused me to be very destructive, and I'm still trying to unpack those boxes, still trying to deal with those. I don't like to say it. I don't think you like slay your demons, right? I think you learn how to dance with them, right? Because like I have charged the demons enough times to realize like, yeah, that's just not happening. But you got to learn how to get in step with them. I think it says, oh, I see you. I know you.
Yeah.
I know you're fucking. Oh, you want to do the tango today? And so it's like, I know how to cha-cha, right? I know whatever fucking dance you want to do today. And so it's only been through in recent years I start to recognize. I say, oh, it's this one coming, like. And by having that recognition, I say, okay, I know how to dance with you. I know where we're going to step. I know I'm not going to let you bait me into. And I do think I do want to just talk a little bit about this idea with the relationships. Right, on my second deployment, I had basically the most dangerous course of action happen to me. It's the thing you see in the movies. It's in the books, right? It's your best friend. It's your, and your spouse. And when I got back and I found out, right, that caused me more traumatic stress than anything ever happened in combat. I mean, I was for like an entire year, like just on a fucking destructive war path. I was so fucked up. And then like uh it's something that I still have not fully reconciled. And so it's the idea, because like I said, when you're in the light, you're vulnerable, right? And so the only way a relationship works is if you say, hey, here's this thing, it's in my chest. I'm going to give it to you for safekeeping, right? Because if you're in a relationship and you're expecting like, oh, I know you're gonna fuck me over, it's like that's
Yeah.
probably not a healthy relationship, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's not working either.
the only way to really be in a serious relationship is that you have to have some vulnerability, and that vulnerability opens you up to being. You have, like I said, if everything's if all of life is a battlefield, then you got to have your hands up because you're in the ring. The one time you have to kind of take them down is in those relationships, and you have to take your hands down and say, this is me, and I'm vulnerable and I'm exposed. And when that person fucking attacks you, yeah, that shit will fuck you up.
I don't think he'll mind me saying this because I think it'll help other people. But I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's got PTS issues, and I need to start calling it PTS as well rather than PTSD. But it's kind of been drilled into me. And he was saying that he's having some troubles with a girlfriend, and he's still got PTS troubles. And he was like, "Well, what do you think I should do?" And I was like, "You got to cut it loose, because you have to, as you say, know what your demons are." And know that you either have to give yourself to this person or you can't. It's not anywhere in between. And you know that if she does something to you again, those demons of yours will they will feed on that, and the two go hand in hand. I mean, I'll be honest as well. Like when my PTS got to its worst was when I was in an awful relationship, and that's no coincidence. It's a very common thing, and it's something that I think is overlooked a lot of the time, because one of my first things I ask people now, and they're like, oh, bro, the demons at the moment, the demons are getting me. You've been arguing with your girlfriend, haven't you? Well, yeah. Well, it's like, well, that's the fucking problem, bro. It's, it's I'm not saying it's the partner, because it might be. A lot of times, I know we do this as military people. We're like, oh, she doesn't get me, she doesn't understand. And you've made zero effort to understand or get her or meet her halfway or teach her. But
Yep.
it's something people need to be more aware of. If you're trying to manage PTS or any kind of mental condition, and you are in a bad toxic relationship, you are doomed to failure. Simple as that.
Yeah. So your environment matters, and I think your environment. If you're in a toxic environment, of course, you're not going to get better, and you have to watch out, because often those demons will come disguised as angels, right? And they'll say, hey, just keep doing this thing that fucks you up, right? Just have this other drink, take this other pill. They'll try to keep your demons will come disguised as angels, and they'll try to keep you in that environment for as long as possible. The story I like to tell is when I was on my second deployment, I was at a very, very remote outpost. I mean, we had a wag. I had my shitter was a plastic foldable shitter that I hooked a bag to, right? Like that was my
Nice.
shitter, like wag bag, little portable shitter. I had a pallet of MREs, a pallet of water, and a cami net. That is it. I had no electricity. I had nothing. And I'm out and so because I was on an Afghan base, this little Afghan outpost. And the only piece of exercise equipment I had was a wooden box. And so I would do box jumps on this wooden box. And the base was too small to even run around. So all I could do for exercise is box jumps. One day I miss, and I take a chunk out of my shin that goes all the way down to the bone.
Oh.
So I can.
Gross. Shin's the worst.
Yeah. So I can see like I'm injured, but I'm like, well, I don't have time for that shit. I'm advising these Afghan guys. I got to get. And so my body keeps saying, hey, this is not it. And, I don't put any Neosporin on it. I don't even have a bandage to put on it. And like, I just put it back in my same dirty socks and my same grimy camis. And so I'm putting it back in this shitty ass environment where it's 120 degrees out in Helmand at that time, outside of Marja, and I'm just putting it back. And so my body turns green, it starts to pus, and I'm like, all these indicators like, hey, this is not healthy. Like, you need to treat this wound. And so I have this festering wound that I keep putting back into a toxic environment. And finally, I start to go septic, and I wake up one morning and I've got 103 or 4 degree fever. All my lymph nodes are swollen. I can't fucking move. Finally, I'm like, yeah, I should probably see the doc. So I barely make it to the doc. They fucking start just a ton of IVs and shots of fucking prescriptions or antibiotics, right? Yeah, so all these antibiotics to get rid of this infection. And for the next week, I would have to go see the doc, and he would have to scrape the infection out of the wound, right?
Oh, gross.
And so, but I think that's also emblematic of the idea that like it's painful to clean that shit out, right? And like, but like, one, you got to get it out of that shitty environment, and two, it might hurt and it might be uncomfortable, but you got to clean that shit out. And so, yeah, I think, to your mate who's in the bad relationship, it's like, well, you don't change your environment, you probably aren't going to have a different result. And just be aware of those demons come in disguise as angels, because they'll say, yeah, just have another drink, or just whatever, and you got to know, this isn't an ally here. This is not a friend.
And the other thing as well is I tell people all the time is, like, right now you might be able to juggle bad relationship with your PTS. But what happens if, for instance, things go bad in another part of your life, or one flares up? Like, it can be very easy to put yourself then over the top of what you can handle. So be like, oh well, yeah, I know she's not great for me, but I'm handling it. Well, what happens if your mum got sick, and then you had that,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna have I know I haven't been drinking for a year, but now I'm gonna have a few drinks just to help me cope. Well, now I'm gonna have a Valium to help me cope, and before you know it, you've snowballed. And it kind of happens a lot, and a lot of it just comes down to self-awareness and, like you said, knowing those demons. Something that I forgot to talk about earlier that I wanted to cover, and I think, to be honest, and this is, I'll say what I think on it, because one of the things we was discussing before is this idea of like, how can we hold mental health in the same I don't want to say in the same kind of importance as physical health. If say, for instance, in America with the award system for the Purple Heart, if a physical wound gets a Purple Heart,
Yeah.
but a mental wound doesn't. I think, and this is the reason, to be honest, I'm very glad we don't have something like this in the UK, because it would just be, there is so much then, or what about this, or what about that. I think the reason that it would not work is because, as you said, everybody that was on that base and that decompression of you would have all been like, oh well, I deserve a Purple Heart because I've got mad at the barbershop, right? So I think that's probably the reason it's not possible. Is that kind of like where you kind of see it from?
Yeah, it's where does it end? Obviously, how do you verify? How do you how do you exactly qualify? And that it was. So back in 2008, I think the Pentagon did a major study on Secretary Gates, had a huge study done on whether that we should do moral injuries as well as physical injuries. And so if you look up a New York Times article, it says the Purple Heart is ruled out for traumatic stress. The Purple Heart is ruled out for traumatic stress. And so this was published in 2009, and it's, so I mean, they've done the work, and at least they've done some studies and some analysis, and their conclusion is that PTS is not, they shouldn't pursue that route. And yeah, I think it opens a can of worms, and then of course the New York Times article is going to have a bunch of pathos stories where people say I can't do anything, and I'm as disabled, or if not more disabled potentially than someone with a physical injury, and why not me? And again, I can understand where they're coming from, but then, like I said, it's where does it end? Because I deal, like I said, I dealt with privates that had been in the Marine Corps for 3 months, and they're saying, my drill instructor yelled at me, and now I can't sleep at night. Like, okay, well, they've got, who's to say they don't, right? You can't say that, and so it's, I did want to, you use the word self-awareness. And I do think that is the kind of the operative term there is that, but so self-awareness requires a couple of things. I mean, it requires moments of reflection. And if you never take the time to do an assessment, then you can't ever diagnose, where these wounds might be, the genesis of the wounds, or where they're coming from. And so, you know, as a military, we spend so much time doing the combat lifesaver stuff, right? How do you assess a physical wound? Our acronym is PMARCH-P, right? And so, you sweep the head, you sweep the armpits, you do a rake on the chest, you rake on the back, right? And we do all this stuff to help you conduct this physical assessment. But there is no training at all as to how to do a spiritual, mental, and moral assessment of how you're doing. And just like a physical injury, we categorize the physical injuries in the three categories: routine, priority, and urgent. Right? Routine means you can walk it off; it's a sprained ankle. Priority might be you're shot in the arm, you put a tourniquet on. Urgent meaning I'm a double amputee, like I gotta immediately get to a higher echelon of care. And so I like to say, like, maybe you have a routine moral injury or routine PTS, going on, right? Like you're in a funk, you're not feeling great. And maybe you just need to turn on Jocko, and Jocko needs to tell you, or David Goggins needs to say, stop being a bitch, right? Like, and so like often when I'm having like one of my routine kind of injury days, I just say like, hey, have you considered not being a bitch today? And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, maybe I just get my shit together, right? And I just gotta,
You're taking your dose of Jocko.
yeah, but then sometimes maybe it's kind of I'm down and I'm in this period and I need a buddy, right? And so it's self aid, buddy aid, corpsman aid. It's how we also talk about it. I say, hey, buddy, right? And so much of the healing occurs if you look at Dr. Jonathan Shea, who wrote Achilles in Vietnam, which is the primary kind of scholarly text on moral injury. There's so much healing in being able to just talk to have someone to listen, someone who's listening to understand, not to respond, someone who's empathetic, someone who is willing to sit in that pain and that suffering with you. There's so much healing, and that buddy can say, "Hey, let's go. We got to get out of here. It's time to move." Or that buddy can fireman carry you if they need to, right? And they can help you get out. Okay, so let's say I've tried my Jocko and I've tried talking to my buddy. Let's say I'm an urgent casualty and I can't stop the bleeding. It's just like if you had a gunshot wound to the chest, you wouldn't be like, I can probably patch this up. Hey, buddy, watch this YouTube video and see if you can sew up this gunshot wound to my chest. It's like I'm developing tension pneumothorax. You think you can? If you had a gunshot wound, you say, I want to go to the fucking doctor. And so we have all these people who are urgent casualties who are continuing to bleed, but they don't are unwilling. It's the bleeding is obvious, right? The bleeding is obvious by their behavior to others. But they lack the self-awareness to do any kind of assessment to say, where am I? What might be causing this? And they think they'll somehow handle it. It's like, no, you got a gunshot wound on the inside. Go to the doctor who treats gunshot wounds to the inside. Like, don't think that you can just walk this one off. You're not walking it off. Like, we have to destigmatize just feeling emotions. And so now, anytime, if you're a combat veteran or you're a veteran and you feel sad, people want to say, oh my God, you feel sad? There must be something wrong with you. And it's like, no, motherfucker, I'm just sad because I'm human. And sometimes humans have sad days. Sometimes we have sad weeks. Sometimes we even have, sad seasons for every time there's a season, right? Sometimes I'm a little bit angry. Sometimes I feel a little bit lonely. We've conflated culturally, but especially, within the military, that anytime someone feels anything that isn't happiness, that there's something wrong with you. And what I want to say is like, we need to destigmatize the idea that like you are entitled or that you should always feel happy. It's like, it's not fucking happening. There's no chance. You're human. So, hey, combat veteran, you're sad. That's fine. right? That's fucking normal. And so as soon as we normalize feeling sad, the idea that feeling sad or feeling lonely automatically means something wrong with you rather than means that you're just human, I think that'll also help us come a long way in this conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And one of the things, to be honest, is like, I'll be honest, I sometimes get very pissed off with veterans when they are unwilling to go and get help, because it's understandable at first. You might think there's a stigma. You know, you might not want to talk about it. But once you have talked about it and people have told you to go and get help, go and get fucking help. Like, at that point, you're just being selfish. You are being selfish at that point. You've gone, oh, well, I'm not, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. Okay, you need to go and see a doctor. Well, I don't want to go see a doctor. Well, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? What the fuck do you think? I got really pissed off the other day because somebody had been telling a friend of mine that, oh, I'm really down all the time. I feel awful, this, that, the other. And I'm like, well, if they're that bad, they need to go see a doctor. Well, they don't want to do that because of the stigma. Well, tell them to fuck off. Like, at that point, you've got to be cruel to be kind at that point, because I think some people enjoy wallowing, and I've done it. I've enjoyed wallowing in the pity. Could be quite nice in there. Like, it's people give you attention. But at some point, if you are feeling bad and you've got a gunshot wound to the chest, you're not helping anybody by, this idea that, oh, well, I just, I don't want to, I'm take one for the team. No, you're wallowing in pity, and you're scared. You're scared of going into surgery, let's call it. And you need to fucking go and get it, man. I think this is where I agree with you on the other stuff. We've gone to pat on the back with a lot of stuff. I think sometimes because nobody wants to say to people, oh, you're being selfish if you've got mental illness, because you're not being selfish if you've got mental illness. But if you've got it and you refuse to do anything about it, then you are being selfish.
Your actions reverberate through your family, through your friends, through your workplace. If you are in fact that person that can't stop the bleeding, like, there's collateral. Everywhere you go, you're spilling some of that blood, and you're not the only one suffering at that point. Other people are suffering with you. Other people are suffering because of you potentially, and so yeah, the hero complex of I'm just gonna suck this one up. It's like, no, you're actually just making not only your life shitty, but everybody around you shitty by your refusal to go get the help that you need.
Again, this is one of the things when it comes down to recognizing your demons. And you've almost got to feed them in a way as well, because it's like, I know every day my demon needs some weightlifting. He needs that every day or he's going to be angry. What are the kind of things in your life that are like the kind of the pillars that you've built around for a healthier mindset?
Connection, first and foremost. I think, again, coming back to Dr. Shea's text, he says the number one thing he can do for a veteran isn't prescribe them a pill. It isn't what happens in his office. He has veterans that in community talking to one another. And so I am unyielding and uncompromising on that. Every Thursday morning, I talk to one of my platoon sergeants, one of my staff sergeants, and I've done that for the last 4 or 5 years. Rain or shine, late night or whatever, it doesn't matter. I talk to Caleb Giles every Thursday, and I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have that tether or that foundation that and because you and I, we speak a veteran language, right? And so, like, there's so much understood and just implied that I don't have to provide that context for it. And because he understands me and because I understand him, we're able to freely talk without. And that's just, I think, is probably the most important thing I do. Obviously, the exercise is critical, and then it doesn't have to be, like, just go the fuck outside. Like, that generally is gonna do something. And then for me, reading and writing obviously and so I have this feeling, and I don't really know what the fuck's going on with this feeling. And the only way for me to understand is to write about it, and through writing, it's kind of how I make meaning. And then I say, oh, this is what is happening here. And so I would say connection, outdoors, physical exercise, and then and then writing, and then and my faith, obviously, I think is the foundation for all that as well. Yeah, how have kids changed things? I I have to be more vulnerable than I like to be. I when I'm rocking my daughter to sleep and I'm singing "You Are My Sunshine," I can't. I'm always in the yellow. I think it's a part of my PTS and my TBI, right? Wherever I go, I'm always like alert, like kind of seeing what's up, scanning my baseline. When I'm rocking my daughter to sleep, it's challenging, but I just have to be present because I know like this is such a present or precious moment that like I cannot fuck this up. Like I need to just be here with her and vulnerable right now. And so I think that's been a significant change. I wonder, and actually I talked about this yesterday in class because we were reading a passage from Fields of Fire, and one of the characters, Bagger, is like, "Fuck you guys! Like I got a wife and kid. Like all you guys have to worry about is your own ass. Like I had a son that was born and that on this deployment, and I never met him, and I want to fucking meet him, right?"
Yeah.
And discussing with my students about how that variable will change the equation because yeah, up to now, when I was a company commander or whatever, like I I only had to worry about me. And like just this summer, I went for a 3-week training exercise, and my wife sends me a video recording of my daughter crying before she goes to sleep, saying, "I miss my daddy," and I'm like, I'm about to fucking drop out of this shit right now. Like I can't fucking take this. Like, and so I wonder. I've been very spoiled because I've been at the Naval Academy. I don't know. When I was in combat, I never had any issues being courageous because I was never thinking about me, and I was only thinking about my troops, and I enjoyed doing what I'm doing, and so like it's just no problem. It was never a problem to accept a ton of risk and to run point and to do all the crazy shit that I did. Uh, and I just wonder if I was in that same situation, how would I respond? How would I react knowing now that I do have some people depending on me? And also, I think I wasn't considerate enough of my Marines who had families and who had children because I am so psycho and so mission driven and such. Like I said, I'm like the shark. I'm just relentless, right? I'm just push. My answer is always push. If you ask me what should we do, I'm gonna say push, right? And so like I can always do one more rep. We can always go another mile. We can always work a little bit harder. And so like easy for me to say when I'm don't have anything at home, and so sometimes I wonder. I think I might have fucked up a little bit, and that my expectations were. I'm so ruthless, like I said, so ruthless. Like just be here, be better. I don't give a fuck. And now, I had to leave my daughter for 2 weeks. I was all fucking sappy and sad about that shit, And so, I don't know. It definitely changes things.
That's something I think about, mate, because, like, for me, being on tour was like, this is the purpose of life. This is everything. If I die here, fuck it. I don't care. This is where I want to be. So I'm going to do all that.
Bury me in a pile of brass.
Yeah. But then there was guys in that company who were there because they joined up for a job. They just needed a job and they had kids, and they weren't looking for trying to win a fucking Victoria Cross or anything. They were just there because they needed to claim a job, and then that was the best money that they could earn. I don't have kids myself, but that's something that I've just kind of come to see. I think just, now I'm in my 30s, I've got friends who have kids and stuff, and I know a bit more. I've seen it a bit more, and you realise, oh, actually not everyone that's going on tour is okay with the fact that they might die on tour. Like a lot of them, want to come back, and I think I was very maybe harsh on people thinking that they were cowards, where they weren't cowards. They just wanted to get home to the kids. Something my thoughts have definitely changed on that one. Thanks so much for coming on today, mate. Time always flies on this one. I want to leave on something a very positive note, which is, what are you most looking forward to? I was going to say in the military career, but it might be that you might revisit the idea if you want to stay on in the military with with the way things are going with the kids. But what are you kind of like really looking forward to? Not just like the next year, but just there's not kind of like the next phase in your life, because you are a father now, you're a teacher now, combat. You never know where combat's going to come, but it could be that your combat life is behind you. So what's kind of like, what are you really looking forward to in these next stages of your development?
I do look forward to getting back to the infantry. I've spent 3 years away, and I'm going to spend one more year away because I'm going to get another master's degree here after this tour. I miss being around junior Marines. Junior Marines are what keep me coming back. Junior Marines are the Marine Corps, and this time away from just the enlisted grunt, being around officers all the time. Just
Boo.
yeah, this is not my scene, right? I do not